All right, so good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who are going to see this twice, I will give out bonus points if you can see the slide, if you pick out the slides I changed last night.
Oh,
I did. Oh, yeah. Extra credit.
okay.
Extra credit. Okay, so living light, integrating plant-friendly lighting into architectural spaces, because people and plants need light, and we really need the same stuff. So I'm trying to get this to catch on. Plants are the canary in the cubicle. So if there's not enough light to support a plant, then there's not enough light to support human beings from a health standpoint. We all know the tech bros that are behind these computer screens that live in these caves. We need to move the workplace out of the cave and into the light, because we all know that poorly lit workspaces and other spaces are just not good for our health. It's bad for our head, causes headaches, reduced focus, lower productivity. And we know this through the natural cycle called a circadian rhythm. So the humans and plants like a sunrise. We like to be productive in the middle of the day, and then we like to wind down at the end of the day, and this mirrors mirrors how we've evolved over all these years, and plants have done that too. So what does sunlight provide with humans? Well, sunlight provides us with vitamin D, which most Americans are deficient of because we're not outside enough. Sleep quality, because the circadian rhythms regulate sleep habit. Our metabolism and cognitive function and eye health, and there's a bunch of other things that come through that are benefit from being exposed to natural light. Now we look at a plant eats light. Yes, plant food is light, photosynthesis. And what do we get? We get the sunlight comes in, and it takes CO2 pollutants, and out it pops oxygen, phytochemicals, which is the good stuff that makes you feel good, and H2O through transpiration. This is the healthy level of humidity. This is not the bad humidity that HVAC people try to take away. In fact, most buildings are too dry for people. And that's one of the other reasons why we need these plants there, because it helps regulate the humidity.
Question.
Yes?
Is it correct that 55 to 60% of humidity is perfect for plants and people?
Yes. I need to add that in. Yeah.
55%.
So let's talk about all these new, beautiful, bright buildings. Okay? So we go into a new space, a new building, and there's beautiful, nice white light that's coming through, but it's being filtered through low E glass. The low E glass then reduces a lot of the energy that the plant is going to need. So we might be 2,500 foot candles outside. By the time we get inside, we're looking at maybe 200 foot candles if we're lucky at the canopy level, and even less when it's down below. So what we need is we need to have more ways to have light. So the first and foremost, we just have to assume there's not going to be enough light for trees specifically. Okay. And then we also have to recognize that all the things that are being done for energy code actually remove a lot of the stuff that we want for plants, and that's why we have to supplement it with actual machine suns. That's what I call it. And this is the spectrum of where plants want to have. And when you combine this all together, you get the full spectrum. And we also, if you take a look at the light temperature, the light temperature during the day, you can see this happens too. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
So full spectrum. But so they like kind of a little all the colors, but is it the green, yellow, or is it the red, yellow, green? You don't want the purple. I know we're talking about that.
Well, we don't need it unless you want to try to grow food.
Right.
You don't need ultraviolet unless you're growing a crop or you're trying to bloom. If you want these birds of paradises to bloom, then you would need the ultraviolet.
So a lighting architect says, what's the best color for light? He's going to say full spectrum.
Full spectrum white. white. That's what we want.
Alright.
Is the K Kelvin?
Yes. This is the color temperature. You see them on the bulb. So like hotels, they want it around 3,000. Workplaces, it's around maybe 4,000 up to 4,500 because it's brighter. So you can front load this stuff. So you can have, if you have the lights on longer and you have a lower Kelvin, that actually kind of help. Yeah. So yeah, the reason why I call it the machine sun is if you think about the lights as being an artificial sun, then you're really understanding what the sun does for plants and people. But this is what we don't want. This is a real customer site right here. They were told they needed grow lights, and it looks like a marijuana grow operation. It's not necessary, not needed. These are not, we're not growing pot. So essentially, we can provide lights that have a dual purpose. That's what this is all about. It's for plants and people. It's just not for the plants. These are not grow lights specifically. These are lights to support us as living beings and living things. And this is integrated into biophilia. And it's also part of what we create sustainable light. It's sustainable because it helps sustain us, our health, and it helps sustain our plants.
That's a new slide.
Yes?
That was a new slide.
No.
This one looks new. Damn.
Yeah. I was just trying to show the contrast between those marijuana grow lights to a nice bright light with trees. Again, if you want trees, we need light. So if you want to start, we want to be practical. So let's start with the right plant palette, which means pre-acclimated foliage that's been stepped down in the nurseries. One of the problems with bidding situations sometimes is if an exterior contractor wants to just pull a list of plants from Florida, they bring them up here, they're not acclimated, they lose their leaves immediately, it doesn't work, and no one's happy. So you need to consult and work with an interior landscape contractor in your local market to do this. The next piece of it is working with your local contractor to come up with which plants are going to be the most successful and meet those design needs, so we know what kind of light you're going to need. So we can have lower light tolerant plants, or if you want trees, there's our higher light. They need more. So if we bring in the plants that require more light, we can then be practical about, okay, how do we get light to them? And we can actually use timers. We can use sensors and different things that help turn the lights on when we want them. So if it's a restaurant that wants to have moonlight during dining hour, the timer can be on from 4 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the afternoon for the plants, and then after that you can have your moonlight for the space. So there's lots of ways to adapt and optimize and make this a practical piece. So this is a slide of just some uses. I'm just going to go through here and we're going to talk about what the problem is and the way it works. So right here, the indirect artificial light, those soffits that bounce the light back up onto the ceiling, that's great for nice soft light. It doesn't do anything for plants. So if you want to have plants in that space, you're going to have to add a spot to shine over the plant itself. Okay? The same is true for in some cases for indirect light. So next to a window is great, but if you're far away from the window, then you need additional light. And this would be a lower light tolerant plants over here. This tree, for example, needs a lot of light, has a canopy to support it. So we're getting the natural light in, but we also can have a spot that's going to spread the light over the entire canopy. We don't want it just touching pieces of the canopy. Now you see there's uplights here to make the tree look good. That's fine for aesthetics, but the uplights do nothing for the energy at all. So if you're adding uplights and different things to highlight these features, that's decoration only. The plant doesn't care because it's not photosynthesizing from the bottom of the leaves. It's the tops of the leaves that photosynthesize. So in practice, if you take a look at a space, and this slide shows you a number of different uses here. You see this thin leaf fig in this retail space, and there's a spot hanging right above it. And that's a very inexpensive thing to do. This is all LED. It's environmentally friendly in terms of energy usage. We love the technology that's coming out for all this.
Sunlight.
Yes?
Sunlight.
Sunlight.
Company that's sponsoring your thing.
Yes, that's right. SST Lighting. So I would like to thank SST Lighting for sponsoring us. And SST Lighting does provide the lighting for living walls, like the wall behind me here. And when a living wall is lit, the lighting piece itself can be incorporated into the wall. So this wall is actually in a casino that's really, really dark. And they put the LCD screens in there as a focal point, but really the lights get hidden in the soffits up above. As long as it's spread out evenly, it's a very successful installation. Okay, so I want to talk about foot candles versus lux, versus lumen, versus a acronym called PPF.
That's a new slide.
It is a new slide, that's right. So, on the full spectrum lights that you put in, you want to look for the PPF rating. So those are lights that actually are architectural lights that also are good for plants. And you can get that from Soltech, you can get that from SST Lighting as well. And it identifies, it packages this entire chart into that white light, into that white bulb. Okay? So the way that it works is we need spectrum, we need intensity, and we need duration. Those are the three things that we need with the LED lights. PPF, all right. So I showed you PPF right there. I'm going to tell you what it stands for. Okay, and I just learned this. Did I not do that right? I didn't do that right. Anyway, I mix up acronyms all the time.
So the PPF was the slide before, so it's just the one.
Yeah. Well, what PPF does is it measures the output, the intensity, which is a better measurement than foot candles in that case in terms of the usable light. What that means is that we're asking for a lot of foot candles because we want that intensity for the plants. And PPF shows the rating specifically for what the plants will need, which means you can get away with a more efficient bulb that uses less energy as long as it's a high PPF rating. So that's what that's really about. It's balancing the energy needs to produce that intensity. Okay? Okay, so what are the mistakes to avoid? Don't ask for grow lights necessarily, because you don't want this mistake where it's a bunch of pink lights there. That was a facilities manager that did that on a real client site. Okay? Don't assume natural light is enough because of the low E glass. We're not getting all the spectrum that we need to support these plants typically in new buildings. That's why we need supplemental light. There's also seasonal considerations too, in terms of the time of the year and how much sun even gets through those windows. And in the summer, there could be foliage outside blocking those windows as well, so it actually could be shadier. In my own home, it's actually shadier inside the house in the summer than it is in the winter because of all the trees that are there, okay? The window orientation does impact how much light goes in, just like what I've talked about in my house. Supplemental lighting is really, really needed for tall trees. I keep on saying this, but if you want height, you really, really need the supplemental light, okay? In terms of the spread, we want you to use lenses to make sure that the spread on the lights spread over the entire canopy of the tree that you're trying to light, okay? If we get spots or hot spots on those trees, the tree will actually grow into those hot spots and lose foliage elsewhere, and it's going to start to look kind of patchy and unattractive over time. So that would happen with this tree in particular. This tree, if this was here for 2 weeks, it would probably lose half of its leaves because there's just not enough light for it, okay? And then really, really important tip, and that is you cannot ignore the maintenance and access considerations for both the plants as well as the lights. So the plants are in a location that we can't access, we can't maintain. That has to change because then it's just not feasible as a longer term installation. And the same is true to figure out in terms of how to access those lights to change things and to adjust them. Okay, some tech tips. So the high CRI value, I should have identified. I can't remember the acronym, what that means exactly right now. But it is the most attractive for lighting for plants, because what it does is it makes those plants just look like they glisten. The greens come out really, really well. Some lights actually mirror the sodium lights, oddly enough. So getting the color temperatures correctly makes these things look the best. Full spectrum is good for plants and people. Be cautious of the turn grow light. But let's talk about the light temperature that you have, because the temperature itself is important, but if your space that you're designing needs to have dimmer lights, or you want to have the temperature of 3,000 instead of 4,000, that means we want to increase the amount of time that those lights are on, so it actually can work. So we can do things with lower temperatures, but we just need to know what species to use, and we know that in advance. Okay?
CRI is color rendering index.
Yes, that's right.
I think she gets a gold star.
Thank you, Jen. Color rendering index. And we have a bright future ahead. There's so many innovations happening with light and energy consumption and how we're optimizing it to become healthier for people. So once you add plants into that equation, it's a win-win for everybody. So, any questions so far? Okay. And I like to drive this home, and that is the spaces that are designed well for plants deliver wonderful value longer term for the buildings that we're servicing, by making them habitats that people really actually want to be in. And that's what plants are all part of. And so when you design to a space that is for a living thing or living people like us, and for living plants, it's a place where people actually want to be. Because as people, we drink water, we get sunlight, we're basically houseplants with emotions. So remember this, the plants are the canary in the cubicle. If there's not enough light to support a plant in your space, there's not enough light to support healthy human occupancy. Okay, thank you.
Shane is up. Thank you, Shane.
And just a little bit about Shane. He's president of Planterra. They just celebrated 50 years in business this year. Let's hear it for Shane's company. He's very knowledgeable in the industry. We want to say thank you to Sunlight because they sponsored this event. And if you have any questions,